So let me start by introducing Adriana Arriaga, who goes by the alias Adriana La Artista, who was born in 1994 in Santa Barbara, where she currently lives and works. She is an artist and designer who creates bold, provocative, and impactful illustrations that reflect upon her culture, community, and personal experiences. She describes herself as a contemporary Chicana designer, where she combines practices from the Chicano movement of the 1960s with present day applications to create and share her work. She received a BA in Art Design Studies and a minor in Chicano Studies from San Jose State University in 2017. She then received her Master's of Fine Arts at the University of California, Davis in design in 2019. She's also an alumni of Santa Barbara City College and has been featured in more than 20 exhibitions, has hosted numerous workshops and art pop-ups, and was recently featured on the cover of the Santa Barbara Independent in September of last year. So please join me in welcoming Adriana. Thanks for joining us, Adriana.
Thank you, John. So hi, everyone. My name is Adriana, and today I'll be talking to you about my journey in becoming a contemporary Chicana designer. So my interest in graphic design began when I was recovering from an eating disorder in high school. And during my recovery, I was looking at what influenced me, and I realized that the photoshopping of women's bodies and advertisements was affecting how I was looking at myself. And I remember looking up, who was responsible for the photoshopping and advertisements, and I came across the term graphic designer. And it was then that I decided that I wanted to work in advertising to change the way the media portrayed women and men. So I would say from the beginning of my design career, ethics was really important to me. And so I started taking art classes during my senior year. And, I was taking a digital art class where I made my first illustration in Illustrator. And eventually, Illustrator would become the main tool that I would use to create all my current work. And so this is just like a really quick illustration of um, like the beach that I was at, and I entered it into a student art show, and it was a part of that. So I went on to graduate, and I ended up going to Santa Barbara City College, where I was going to study graphic design. And I, was taking art classes, photography classes, and graphic design classes. But I did feel like I was a little behind on my skills because I just started like really late in high school to explore my artistic creativity. And so at the same time, I was also taking a lot of Chicano studies courses, especially with professors like Dr. Tomas Carrasco. And I was learning about the history of Chicanos in the United States. And I started to explore what it meant to be a Chicana, but at the same time, I was still struggling with my art and feeling like I had no idea what I was doing. And so I was noticing that what I was learning in these Chicano studies courses was starting to influence my work, but I didn't fully embrace it yet. And so this is just kind of like an example of how that was happening in my work. So I remember like learning about the concept of, where there's life, there's death. So I started this kind of painting where it's like death holding a baby. And I was also, reading material as well. And I painted a scene from a book called Enrique's Journey, where people are like jumping on a moving train, during their migration. And my skills weren't great. I'm not a painter, but I still really wanted to create messages that were impactful and meaningful. And then during my last year at Santa Barbara City College, I took a 3D design class with Ed Ings. And I remember he would like give lectures before we'd go into the studio. And I remember during this specific lecture, he was really emphasizing the importance of telling your experience through your work. And then it was in that class where like it suddenly like clicked. I was like, okay, I'm a Chicana and I'm an artist. And from now on, I'm just going to tell the world what it's like to be me, right? And so with this new mindset, I ended up taking a printmaking course with Stephanie Dotson. And
Yeah.
um, in that class, I was really, embracing my Chicana experience. And I remember Stephanie taught me about Jose Guadalupe Posada, and he was a Mexican printmaker, and he did a lot of work that eventually I would revisit when I was in my graduate program for my thesis. And I felt good because I finally found a medium that I felt like I was good at, or at least that I was able to embrace. And I really started to explore my Chicana identity through my work. And so I have two prints here. The one on the left is called The Invisible Worker, and it's about, people who are like farm workers or who work in domestic work, cooks, gardeners, and how we benefit from the work that they do, but we still don't treat these workers as humans. And this is because, there's still experiences of abuse and violence that they're facing in their work environment, or they're in unsafe work environments. And Mujeres de Maíz was just about a little girl who, didn't want to be inside anymore. She didn't want to do the other work that the other women were doing. And she wanted to go outside and grow like the nopal. And I use the nopal a lot to represent strength in my work. And I remember Stephanie really encouraged me to submit these two pieces in the student art exhibition. And so I remember I went to Michael's and I bought these frames and I submitted it to the exhibition. And both the images were selected. And so here are the pieces in the gallery. And there was also reception. I remember like being really excited because, my work was accepted, and I was just really happy that I was able to show my work. But apparently there was also awards that I wasn't aware of. So in the middle of the reception, they're announcing like winners, and they announced the winner for the division of beginning printmaking, and they said my name, and I was like really shocked. So I was like, oh wow, like I was just happy like being here. And so this is a photo from the reception, and there's me going in to shake Stephanie's hand. So the moral of the story is, when Stephanie gives you advice, listen. And that was my last semester at Santa Barbara City College. I graduated, and I knew that I wanted to further explore my Chicana experience in my work. So I ended up transferring to San Jose State University. And San Jose State was different because it was in Silicon Valley. I started to develop new interests, especially in tech, but I was still taking a lot of graphic design and Chicano studies courses because I really wanted to see my activism in my work. And I also started to explore more illustrations in my work. And I was also playing with just like different principles of design, and, exploring what this all could mean to me. And I started to really use visual communication to design to communicate, the issues that were happening in the community, and also creating a call to action with my work. So on the left is a content map where I'm showing, the different social issues in society, and just kind of like creating a way to inform people of what's going on. And I also was creating like these posters. And so this was a poster that was created during one of AIGA's Get Out the Vote campaigns. And it was, a way to get people to vote. And it was featured on their online gallery and an Instagram page. So that was really fun. But I felt like I wanted to keep exploring design and Chicano studies. So I ended up applying to a graduate program. I applied to the University of California, Davis. And initially I kind of like went in um, with an interest of doing UI and UX design through a Chicana perspective. And so while I'm in grad school, I'm taking, these coding courses. I'm talking to people, who are working in the field that I'm interested in, but I'm still making these posters on my own time. And at the same time, I was also looking for my style, and eventually I decided to enter this call for artists from Amplifier, which is a nonprofit, and they had a call out for artists to kind of submit these posters, to get people motivated to vote. And if your poster got selected, it will be printed and shared with people across the country. And it's also available online currently to download for free as well on their website. And so my poster ended up getting selected. And I think this really encouraged me to further explore what these posters could do for the community, but it was something still that I was doing on the side. I wasn't really focused on that for my research. And I remember in grad school, I ended up taking a cultural studies course about creativity in the time of crisis, which focused on different social movements like the Chicano movement, the Black Power movement. And in one of the classes, I had to lead a workshop with a classmate, and we talked about Chicano art, and we also had an activity where we asked our classmates to write a poem or make a poster to show what freedom looked like to them. And I remember like I left the class feeling that we were able to transform this space with our creativity. And in this space, we were okay with being vulnerable. And I wanted to keep exploring that. And I had a sudden realization that I needed to change my thesis direction. So I went to my chair of my committee, Tom Majorana, to talk about like what happened in class and like what I've been doing and all these posters. And I remember being like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to change my thesis and I need to keep exploring what this all means for me and my work. So he really helped me explore what that all meant. And he would have me like do certain tasks, like design, 5 posters in a week, and we would talk about it. And at the time, my thesis proposal was to create a digital kiosk that would tell stories of workers. But I felt that before I could apply this Chicana perspective to digital design, I needed to apply it to print first. At the same time, when I was doing a lot of research, I was thinking about how, I've had comments from some designers who would say like the posters that I was making, were not design, that they were art. And, they would ask like, well, why aren't you doing this in the art department? Or why aren't you doing this in the Chicano studies department? And one thing that I was taught in my design education was that there was a difference between art and design. And in design, form follows function. And to them, my work was not doing that. So I ended up deciding to prove them wrong. And I began researching. And in order to prove that, I had to go back to the Chicano studies material. And that is where my thesis was born. So designing in color, graphic design through a Xicana lens is the title of my thesis. And it is a metaphor. And it means that I'm designing using my community cultural wealth. And community cultural wealth was introduced to me in one of my Chicano studies classes. And it's research done by Tara J. Yoso that talks about 6 capitals that students bring from their community into the classroom. And in my case, I was bringing them into design. So for example, I was using navigational capital to move between institutions and my community. And I was also using linguistic capital by using Spanish and English in my designs to connect with people. So using this helped me look at my work through a different perspective. And then I began to uncover characteristics of the Chicanx poster that I hadn't seen before. And I quickly realized that similar to the Chicana, my posters were also in Napantla. And Napantla is defined as a state of in-between and was researched by Gloria Anzaldúa. In Napantla, you're constantly moving between different positions or spaces. So for the Chicana, like me, it's, being both Mexican and American, moving between, an academic institution and the barrio. And the poster does the same thing. It could be done, with an analog approach or digitally, move between galleries and the streets, be folk and modern, and most importantly, be both art and design. So if design is about form following function, and if I take that definition and apply it to the Chicanx posters, then what I find is that the function of the Chicanx poster is to build community. So posters, especially Chicana posters, Chicanx posters, have always had a function in the community. They were used to connect with other Chicanos, to form an identity, and to protest against injustices, especially during the Chicano movement of the 60s. So I knew how posters were used in the past, but for my research, I was really trying to find out how a contemporary Chicana designer builds community with her posters. So for me, my posters are done in either block print or an illustrator. So I'm mixing old and new techniques in design. They also fall into three main categories, such as identity, cultura, and protest, which help me connect with others in the community. And most importantly, the typography and illustrations are all customized by me to explore and show what a contemporary Chicana aesthetic can look like. So the first category is identity. So I create portraits. I really want to spotlight people who are doing work currently in the community. And for these portraits, I will usually do photo shoots. We'll go out and I'll take photos of them, and then I will go in an Illustrator and create these portraits. So this is really a way for me to help connect with them, and also I end up giving them the poster design in the end. And it's really just about highlighting community members now rather than later, and really just showing the appreciation of the work that they do for the community. And the next category is cultura. So for this, I use familiar like icons or symbols from a shared experience to connect with people. And I also like to use humor in my work. So this one is called Self Conchas. And I created this when I was just getting like a lot of critique from people that I just like didn't need to hear. And in a lot of Latinx work, we'll use the phrase like, don't be self-conscious. But I was like, sometimes I do feel self-conscious, like I do feel self-conscious, right? So it's a play on the word self-conscious, right? And so I have this picture of me like holding a concha like in front of my head. And so I took that photo and I created this illustration where I have like a concha head, and it says, self conchas on it. And it's also, aside from the illustration, I'm also really playing with my typography and just kind of seeing what I could do to customize these posters to really represent what message I want to show. I also have protest posters. And so this is a way for me to visually communicate and bring awareness to issues happening in the community and to show solidarity. And so this specific poster was created after reading about the violence and abuse women who are working in agriculture experience. And again, it's an illustration and me creating my own typography. And I'm also mixing like Spanish and English as well for this poster. So for me, it wasn't enough to just kind of sit in my computer and make work and do all this research. I really needed to go out in the community and see my work in action. So I would also submit my work to exhibitions, but at the same time, I also understood that we're not always welcome in these spaces. So I started doing these kind of community pop-ups where I will go out and hand out posters for free at events or protests. And it was really important for me to have my work in the hands of the community. And so while sharing these posters, I also realized, when we're all holding the same poster, it helps really change the environment that we're in and create an impact that shows the importance of unity. And then aside from posters, I also hand out stickers, and I needed to create something to help me hand out these stickers. So I created this little like sticker carrier with just like an old box that I got from an order. And I also used an old laptop strap. And for a lot of people, this would be me prototyping, but it's also me being rascuache. And rascuache is about using what you have to create. And I'm showing people that we already have these skills, that I learned from my community, and I'm applying it into design to help me create and connect with people. So it's me, tapping into my community culture wealth and bringing that knowledge into design. And so I ended up taking this box out to an event in San Jose. So I'm handing out stickers. And I remember there was someone who was like, "Oh, you want a free tamale?" Because I gave them a sticker. And I was like, "Sure." So it's really me just going out there and seeing my work in action. So for my thesis installation, oh, aside from that, I also visited Chicano Park. And that was also really important for me to go. So Chicano Park is in San Diego, and it's this area where it's just like these huge Chicano murals. And I was able to see firsthand how these murals transform the space to build community, and also, the historical significance of Chicana Park. And it was also just a way for me to reflect and think about, my work and how I wanted to continue my work when I went back home. So for my thesis installation, I really wanted to bring what I was doing outside with the community into the museum. So I created a mural using paper and wheat paste, a technique that, a lot of people use to paste posters outside in the city. At the same time, I was also embracing rascuachismo here. And so it's a term in the Chicano community to describe using, what you have around you to create. And for me, it was also a necessity because I didn't have a lot of money to create an installation. So it was an act of survival. But at the same time, it was also an act of resistance because I wanted to challenge the narrative of what belongs in the museum. And I wanted to show people that my work also belongs inside and outside the museum as well. So the mural is actually made up of 4 pieces of plywood that are 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide. And when I flush them together, they create this giant mural. And in addition with the cart, or with the mural, I created a cart to hand out, stickers during my pop-ups. And this cart was something that I knew I had to create in addition to the mural. And I had 2 interns help me make this cart out of wood, and it takes the form of the paletero cart. And so the reason for that is because there is this one time where I was thinking about like, okay, I have this mural, but I have to add something else. And I remember driving down, the street in Davis, and I remember that day thinking like I really wanted to get like an elote, and there was always a street vendor at this corner, and every time I saw him, I would never have cash. And then the one day I had cash, he was not there, and I was just like, oh man, like just thought it was kind of funny, but at the same time, I was thinking like, I wonder why he's not there. Like, is it because of the weather? Like, did something happen to him? And then I immediately remembered as a kid when me and the neighborhood kids would warn street vendors whenever there was cops nearby, and I felt like us doing that was really helping us build trust and community. And during these pop-ups, I kind of had that feeling as well, like when I'm handing out my work, I'm kind of building a trust with people. And I felt like I needed to create this cart in the form of paletero cart to show that like there's that I'm not doing things just for the aesthetic, that there's always a meaning behind everything I do. And then I ended up graduating with an MFA after that experience. I realized that as a contemporary Chicana designer, my social responsibility is to create work that brings awareness and encourages people to take action. So during the end of grad school, I made this poster to kind of show the world like who I am now. And this is how I see myself, as divine, confident. And it's also like how I want other people to see themselves as well. So I ended up moving back home to Santa Barbara, and I still make posters, and I also really like exploring like new themes and illustration styles. I also still do pop-ups as well. So the photo in the middle is a pop-up I did during a meeting that was about ICE collaborating with the police department in Santa Barbara. And I was handing out the posters, and I really saw how the room changes when we're all holding the same poster and the impact that has in the room. And so it's really important for me to always show up, for my community and taking action with the work that I do. And then in 2020, I was featured on the cover of The Independent. I got in touch with someone named Selena, who then connected me with Charles, who wrote a story about my journey and helped me really reintroduce myself to Santa Barbara and Goleta and talk about my goals and as a designer. And that now that I'm home, and I got a lot of support from people, and I met new people like John, Heather, and everyone from Friends of Public Art. And it really is a way to help me continue my work and seeing my community um, connecting with my work as well. It's funny because I didn't know I was going to be on the cover until the day of. Like, I knew they were writing an article, and I was like, okay, cool. And then when this came out, I was like, oh, I'm on the cover. So I had a lot of friends like send me pictures like, wow, I did not know that was happening. So it was really exciting. So now a lot of my work does have a lot of religious motifs, and I use it differently depending on the message. On the left is how I've seen a lot of Chicana posters use the Virgen de Guadalupe as a symbol of hope. And so this piece is about raising the next generation to be strong. And I also use a nopal to represent strength. So, you have the woman holding, raising the child, and, the child has a nopal in the hand to represent a strong generation. But then on the right, I also use religious motifs to kind of like rebel against it. So I would say the church was like the first institution I rebelled against. So these portraits are about doing something that I'm not supposed to do if I want to be considered like a good Catholic girl. So here is an illustration of me about to make out with myself. And I really like to play with tension and have the audience see things that they're not supposed to be seeing. So it's also about like vanity and just like the title says, being obsessed with oneself. But I also still use, cultura and humor in a lot of my work. So on the left is a recent poster I did inspired by Loteria, a game that we play in the Latinx community, and just like artistic commentary of what's going on in the world. And then on the right is me still like playing around with typography. And that one was specifically created because like I got this really weird comment from someone being like, look, homegirl. And I was like, I am not your homegirl. And so I just kind of like to let everyone know that like a lot of my work, usually has a story behind it. So in the end, I really want other artists to understand the importance of multidisciplinary work and how it helps us better understand the world we're creating for. And also to know that everyone's journey is different and the mediums we're using are different. But at the same time, I want everyone to remember that, you have an important role in the world that we live in, and to think about how your work can influence people to imagine and create a better future. So I want to say thank you to everyone. And now I will open the floor for any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. So if anybody has a question, please put it in the chat so that we can share it. I have a question. So you use a lot of self-portraiture in your work, and you have a pseudonym that you came up with. How did you come to that? Where did you come by that pseudonym?
Adriana La Artista, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so that name was actually given to me by my community. And it really came out when I was doing, these pop-ups, and I was like, I don't speak Spanish very well. So I would always kind of like try to explain people like what I do. I'm like, I'm a designer, I'm a graphic. I didn't know how to say graphic designer in Spanish. And a lot of people would be like, "Oh, Adriana, like eres una artista," and I was like, "Yeah," and it was like Adriana La Artista, and so that kind of, for me, it's like something that I feel like my community gave to me, and I really like take that as a really important role that I have in the community to be the artist, to share my work, and connect with them in that way.
And the self-portraiture aspect are there artists that you admire that influence that? I'm thinking of Frida Kahlo. I don't know why, but um, are there other artists that you've looked at that have influenced you?
Yeah, definitely, Melanie Cervantes. I actually met her one time, and I remember when I first met her, I was like really excited. Like I have this photo where I'm like, we took a photo. I'm like, have this really big smile because she does a lot of print work as well, and so she does silk screening. And I'm also, like a poster maker, but I do it differently. And so she has a lot of portraits of women that she does that I think are really inspiring, and just her technique and the different colors she uses. I understand how hard silk screening is because I was never good at silk screening. I was more into the reductive printing, as well as Ernesto Llerena, who is also, he does stencils. So he does his posters with stencils, and his work is amazing. He also does a lot of portraits as well. And I find a lot of the artists on Instagram. So I feel like Instagram is definitely a place for artists to really share their work and connect with others and build community. And so it's really important for me to make sure I'm always engaged with people, and especially now, like since we're in a pandemic, we can't really do things in person, so I really rely on Instagram to connect with them.
And you talked a little bit about how your work functions in public spaces. Can you talk a little bit about the project that you're working on for Friends of Public Art?
Yeah. So right now, I remember I spoke with Heather, who she reached out to me after the article came out, and I was telling her how a lot of the times what Chicanos do, or other people do in the community, is that we'll leave, like to go and explore, go to college or something like that, and we always, usually come back to our community to kind of share what we learned. And so I was telling her like how I really wanted to create a mural in the area I grew up in, and just to like show people like what I've become. And so she was able to take that and connect me with people. And so right now I've been proposing a mural at a specific location at Nectarine Park. And Nectarine Park was where I would wait for the bus when I would go to elementary school. So I was thinking like, oh, if I make this mural at like the bus stop that I waited when I was in sixth grade, like just this big thing about coming back to my community and showing people like what I've been doing and what I'm doing now, and hopefully inspiring them and connecting with them to show them that, you could really do what you want to do with the help of community.
Hmm. And that's in Goleta?
Yes, it's in Goleta. It's specifically in Old Town Goleta. And it's going to be really similar to my thesis project, where I'm using just, accessible material like wheat paste and copy paper. And it's going to be more like a portable mural. That way it can be moved around in the city if it needs to. And then the image is an image of one of my friends who's planting the seeds. And that image was inspired by this quote that I would hear from this film called Precious Knowledge. And that film was shown to me in my Chicano Studies course. And in that film, one of the teachers says, if you plant the seed, that seed will grow. And that quote really just resonated with me, because I quickly thought of all, like, the educators, whether like in academia or in the community, who are planting the seeds of knowledge in their students or in other community members, and how we're nurturing those seeds by sharing knowledge and thinking critically about the world around us. So yeah, so that's the image. So I'm hopefully have it sometime this year. And yeah, so definitely keep updated.
And we had a question come in from Lucas. How did you get into digital appropriation?
uh, I don't know what that means. Could you rephrase that question?
Yeah, maybe Lucas, you could clarify what you mean by that. Meanwhile, Jake, besides the cart and sticker box you created, have you thought about doing 3D design, sculpture products, or other concepts, etc.?
I have experience doing 3D design. I ended up taking a 3D design class, but I was never really good at it. And so I'm not really good with like making things with my hands, like ceramics or anything like that. So I usually just stay away from those things. But I'm really am interested in doing things like, AR, or figuring out how to use different technology to keep spreading my work with other people.
Uh, so Lucas wrote, appropriation is where you take an old piece of art or cultural image and change it slightly to give a new message. True. Uh, so do you feel you're using appropriation in your work? Do you feel like that you're doing that?
I'm trying to think of what pieces would be considered appropriation or digital appropriation. I guess I would assume the images where I'm using like the Virgen and stuff like that. But the thing is, like, if that's the case, La Virgen de Guadalupe is definitely something that is prominent in the Latinx community, and it was definitely something that involved in Catholicism. And I feel like because Catholicism was really forced on my community, I can use that image however I want to. And so exploring what that means now for me as a contemporary Chicana designer, is just a way to kind of just like share people like how this image or the symbol has affected me on a personal level, and sharing my experience. And I find that a lot of people feel the same way too. So I think it's really important to me that I keep, you know, relaying those messages of how I experience that specific one. Uh, is there any other ones?
Someone wants to know if anybody in your community has an issue with you using Guadalupe.
No, like I said, a lot of the times I do get a lot of support. I understand why, because it's a very it's a symbol that I've seen in a lot of Chicana work to be used again as a symbol of hope. And like I said, I think for me, because that was something that was forced on me, and I think about like colonialism and stuff like that, that I can use it how I want to. But I know that not everyone agrees with that, and that's fine. But I think the message behind it is something that a lot of people do connect with, about what it means to be a good Mexican girl, right? Or like what it means to be, or thinking about things like La Malinche or La Llorona, and how those icons, what they mean in our story and in our history as well.
Somebody wants to know what your goals are for the future when it comes to your work. We talked a little bit about what you have upcoming with the public Friends of Public Art project. Do you have any specific goals or anything in the works besides that project?
Um, I think for me, I always really wanted to have a studio. I don't have a studio. I really rely on my computer to make everything. But I would really like to have a space where I can connect with other artists as well. And I think the importance of doing a lot of public work is to, you know, let other artists know that, you know, we're here, and there's a community here. And if there's a space where I can like get everyone together where we can talk and support each other's work, whether it's, you know, coming up with ideas or having a space where they can do things like printmaking or, you know, ceramics or something, that would be something I would love to be a part of. But at the same time, I know I can't do that by myself. I have to do that with the community. And so for me coming back, I really wanted to let everyone know that like, let's collaborate. All we have is community, and we really need to support each other in order to make things like that happen.
Thank you. Seneca would like to know how's the pandemic affected your work?
Ooh. I really miss doing pop-ups, because that was the best way for me to really get to know people, because Instagram is really fun. You know, I'm able to, you know, share online and connect with people from, you know, outside of Santa Barbara, and it's fun. But a lot of my posters I feel like are meant to be big. You know, they're meant to be giant murals. And so there's a lot of little details in my work that you don't really see on the screen, because it's not really meant for the screen. And so I really wish I could go out and do pop-ups, and I love giving out free stuff. Like I'm always giving out free posters and stickers, and it's always been a way to connect with people. So I do miss that, and I miss doing, you know, exhibitions and talking about my work with people in person. But at the same time, I've been really grateful that I have a lot of friends who do online, you know, things like this, or doing online galleries that are still supporting me in that way. But it is also a little easier for me because, like I said, a lot of my work is on the computer. So I just kind of like draw things, or I take photographs, or ask people for photographs if I'm doing portraits of them. And then I'll be able to create my work in that way.
And somebody wanted to know what your Instagram handle is.
So my Instagram handle is Adriana La Artista, which is cool because no one had claimed that by the time when I made that. So I was like, this was meant for me. So you can follow me at Adriana La Artista.
Let's see if anybody else wants to submit some more questions. We have a little more time. And so some people on this visit, you know, they may not be art majors yet, or maybe they're thinking about it, or maybe they're not intending to be an artist. do you think, what was it about City College that really benefited you most? You talked a little bit about the class with Stephanie, but and how do you think that art classes could benefit non-art majors?
Yeah, I think like by the time I realized what I wanted to do like in life to be a designer and artist, it was kind of like late, because I feel like a lot of the times there's some kids who like grow up and they're really artistic and they have all this material and I wasn't really like that. Like I like to make stuff, but no one was really like you should be an artist. So that kind of happened to me later in life or at least in high school. And so I feel like at Santa Barbara City College, I was really able to explore all that just because the community's small and I was able to really take courses that were able to really feed my interests in and finding my identity too. At Santa Barbara City College was the first place where I really learned about Chicano cities and Chicano history and I know Dr. Tomas Carrasco really like changed my perspective of how I see the world and the community. And then I go to San Jose State and I meet more people, right? And it's just was really inspirational. And I feel like for me, I always kind of meet people who are just kind of stuck in one department, especially because if they go to CC and they're like, well, I'm going to do this specifically, and that's all I can focus on. So I think it's really important that professors are encouraging people to go outside of the department to explore and really find a connection between what they're passionate about with other things, because in order to create for the world, you really have to understand what's going on. So whether if it's like engineering or like a political science class, like take it, because that will benefit you in your work that you do. um okay, I think there's
Tama asked, has it been difficult being a woman of color? Have you experienced discrimination in the art world?
Yes, I know at the beginning of my artistic journey, I had a lot of people kind of tell me like, "Oh, like we've already seen this before," and I was like, "What? Like, what does that mean?" And I think the way I interpret it now was like, they were like, "Well, we already have a Chicana artist, and like there can only be one, and I was like very confused on what that meant, right? Because all our experiences are different. And um, I remember I also had some professors like straight up tell me like it's gonna be really hard for you to be an artist as a Latina. And I was just like, okay, like I don't know if that was like them warning me or just kind of like telling me. And I felt like a lot of the times what I was doing, like I said, people weren't really like taking it seriously. They were just like, oh, this is just a Chicana artist like doing something, like we're designers. And I'm like, no, I'm a designer too. And so that's why my thesis was really about that, like proving them like, no, my work is important. The work that I'm doing and the work that other people are doing are important. And the thing is, what I'm doing is not new. It's something that's always been in the community, but for some reason, like people weren't, listening to us. So I really wanted to take an opportunity to like make people listen and record it, with my thesis in academia. So when there's someone like me who, who's struggling as well, they can look at my work and be like, you know what, Adriana did it. I can do it too. But yeah.
Um, this is a question we get. Sometimes it's a stumps people, but do you have a favorite piece of work of your own creation?
Yeah, one of my favorite pieces is the piece from the last slide where I'm holding like a blanket and there's like a halo. So I like to use a lot of halos in my portraits, especially for people who are like really important community members who are doing work, because I really do see them as saints. I want to put them in a platform, and it might be kind of like, wow, you think you're a saint? I'm like, yeah, like I don't know. I don't think it's a bad thing to think of yourself as someone important. Um, and so for me, that portrait was, I created it during like, it's pretty recent, right? It was in 2020. And I was going through this really big change in my life where my life just, shifted. And I really wanted to show just like the vulnerability of how, what I was feeling. And so I really just love like this small pout that I have, and there's like little details that you can only see if you zoom up close. And this is what I mean when my work is meant to be big, because on a screen you can't really see that, but if it's, you know, on a large mural, you'll be able to see like the shadow under the lip, or just like the little details in the nose. And I just look really sad, and I really like that I was able to really convey that with just like a simple illustration, or a vector image. And just like the hands, I really love the details of hands, and just like, you know, drawing the little lines, little wrinkles. But yeah, I would say, and that one's specifically titled "Can't You Tell That I'm Trying to Feel?" And yeah, it was just me being vulnerable. And I think for me, a lot of my work is I'm not afraid to be vulnerable. I'm not afraid to, you know, tell people that I'm upset, or that I'm angry, or that I'm happy. And I think that really translates in a lot of the work that I do. I think-
And Stephanie has a question for you. What advice would you give yourself as a student at SBCC?
um,
Back
so
in,
I'm if I come back, so I'm gonna take this as a perspective as you know, being the art student. And one thing I always tell people is, or you know, you can use it for, you know, anyone else, but that not everyone's opinion matters. And I learned that really late. I really learned that like in grad school, that yeah, not everyone opinions matter. And I say that because when I was showing my work to people, you know, there were some people who I could just tell like weren't didn't want to see me grow, and there were some people that I knew did want to see me grow. And so I think I quickly realized who wanted to help me and who was just, you know, trying to bring me down. And especially with things like art or design or anything, you know, where you're creating and you're putting so much work into what you're making, and then someone to be like, this isn't great, or like this isn't worth, you know, your time, and you do feel like really discouraged. And so I always kind of like let people know, like, you just got to do you, surround yourself with people who you know are there to support you, and just keep moving forward, because you know we all have a purpose, and you will find that purpose. And maybe it's not at City College, maybe it's in another time in your life, or maybe you already found it. And I would say just keep going, and know at the end, it's really about you, and your happiness.
um, thank you. We have one more question here. Is Adobe Illustrator your program of choice for your digital art, or is there a different program you use? Why?
For majority of my work, I do use Adobe Illustrator, and that's because I learned Illustrator right in high school. I didn't learn Photoshop. I don't really use Photoshop unless I really need to. And I always think it's kind of funny. I'm like, I have an MFA in design and I don't know how to use Photoshop. But I also like to use Procreate, which is an app you can get on the iPad. So you'll see the difference between like my vector illustrations, and then like the illustrations I do in the tablet, because the line is different. But I do prefer Illustrator because it's just really easy for me to work with the pen tool, and I think I'm able to really like create, you know, different strokes that really like help me emphasize the image. And it's also just really easy for me to like export it, and change the canvas size for whether it's like print or for digital. And I also, you know, use other Adobe products as well, so it's a little easier for me to kind of go back and forth between the different apps as well.
And Holly wants to know, are you commissioned for work? Is your art providing you with an income? I
I
hope.
do I do commissions. I'll probably do like a commission like once or twice a month. It really depends on the project. And the thing about like that too is I also really learned that I don't have to take like every commission, because there's some people who want things that I just don't want to do, or that I can't do. And so I'm really honest with people who are looking to hire me for their work. And I do a lot of different things. I'll do like, you know, right now I'm doing a book cover, or I'll do a lot of print work or portraits as well. But currently, right now, my art isn't my main source of income. I really do my artwork because I just feel like that's just something I'm supposed to be doing, which is why like I'll hand out my posters for free or my stickers for free. I also don't have an online shop yet. That's something that I know people have been wanting to see. So I'm still trying to understand the logistics of what it means to sell your art
And I just
online.
keep saying that, and I feel a lot better. I'm getting to
And
understand how I could get my.
Did you go get that book?
Somebody's
No, I didn't go get it.
not on
I
mute.
thought, you know what I have to do? I have to work on the blood pressure, which I'm doing.
Well, it'll tell you.
And what you gave me, and I thought, right now, I've got enough, just do those two, and then
Okay.
I'll do the back.
Yeah.
and then but so currently I work as a digital designer, and so I work in e-commerce, so I'm in charge of designing or updating the design on websites and stuff like that. So I'm still a designer, just a different type of work that I do for my 9 to 5 job, but I still make sure that I make time for my artwork and what I'm passionate about, which is connecting with people and helping define what a contemporary Chicana artist can do, and hopefully inspire other artists as well.
Benny wants to know, was there a class at City College that you found most beneficial for your journey?
Definitely the printmaking class with Stephanie, because it was the first time, like I said, I felt like really confident in what I was doing. I took a lot of drawing classes. I can't draw. I took a lot of I would draw still lifes, and we would do like a figure drawing class, and I just don't have there's this term where it's like tienes la mano pesada, so like I have a really heavy hand, so I'm not like gentle, so I can't really do like the light strokes and stuff. But with reductive printing, I'm just carving, right? And so I felt really, really confident in that. And at the same time, that was the moment in my journey where I started to really explore my identity as a Chicana. And at the same time, outside from art, it was a lot of the Chicano studies classes that I took with Carrasco, and just really understanding, the history of the Chicano movement and what I want to do now as a Chicana with other people in the community, and understanding the history and really helping me find my identity. And there was something he would always say, where he would say he was born a Mexican American boy and he evolved into a Chicano, and I really understand that now. And so it's definitely a process, and I feel like those two courses were really, really important for me to get to where I am today.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think everybody really benefits from your experience at City College. Um, and we really enjoyed this visit today. Thank you for sharing everything with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And like I said, you can follow me at Adriana La Artista. And I do like giveaways, and I announce, the next projects that I'm doing and stuff like that, because I really want to continue connecting with people and sharing my work, and hopefully inspiring and working with others. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adriana. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.